please, don't touch me." Those were the first words Ophelia whispered to her husband on their wedding night. Crispin Ashworth, the most feared man in Chicago, had expected many things from his arranged marriage, but not this, not the terror in her eyes, not the way she flinched when he stepped closer, and definitely not the bruises he saw when her dress slipped. Fingerprints, dozens of them, in different stages of healing. Someone had been hurting his wife for years, and in that moment, the ruthless Mafia boss made a decision that would destroy empires, break blood alliances, and start a war. Because some women are worth burning the world for, even if she's too broken to believe it yet. 3 days earlier, the wedding had been decided in a boardroom, not a church. Montague Fairfax, patriarch of one of the oldest criminal families on the East Coast, had come to Chicago with a proposal that Crispin couldn't refuse. An alliance that would unite their territories, consolidate their power over the Great Lakes region's commerce, and put an end to 3 generations of tension between their organizations. The price: marriage. His daughter, Ophelia Fairfax. 26 years old, Montague had said, sliding a photograph across the mahogany table. Educated in Switzerland. Speaks 5 languages, never caused any trouble. Crispin had studied the photo with clinical eye. A young woman of classic beauty. Dark brown hair, honey-colored eyes, delicate but defined features. In the image she was smiling, but there was something absent in that smile, something extinguished. Why her? Crispin had asked, watching Montague with the sharp gaze that made grown men sweat. You have 2 daughters. Cordelia is the eldest. Something had passed across Montague's face, something quick, too quick to identify. Cordelia is engaged to Tarquin Blackwood. That engagement was made years ago. A pause. Ophelia is available. Available, as if she were inventory, Crispin had accepted. Not for the woman. Women were complications he avoided, but for the empire, for Chicago, to maintain his position as the undisputed power in the Midwest. 3 days later, Ophelia Fairfax became Ophelia Ashworth in a ceremony that had cost $2 million and attracted all the major names in organized crime from 3 states. She had said, "I do," in a clear, firm voice. But her hands had trembled when she signed the marriage certificate, the ceremony. Crispin had watched her throughout the entire event, with the attentions he devoted to studying his enemies. Ophelia moved with rehearsed grace, smiled at appropriate moments, accepted congratulations with impeccable politeness. She wore a dress that had probably required 100 hours of manual labor, and every hair in her elaborate updo was perfectly placed. Too perfect. That was his first clue. No one was that perfect without practice, without consequences for not being so. During the wedding dance, when he took her in his arms, he felt the stiffness in her body. She had maintained exactly 3 inches of distance between them, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, as if afraid to apply pressure. Nervous? He had asked. More from curiosity than kindness. It's an important day, she had responded, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When the music forced them closer, Crispin felt something else, a shudder, imperceptible to anyone not holding her, but he did. His second clue. During the reception, he observed how she avoided physical contact. When guests approached to hug her, she managed to offer her hand first. When her father put his hand on her shoulder, Crispin saw every muscle in Ophelia's body tense, and when Tarquin Blackwood, her sister Cordelia's fiancé, a New York capo with a reputation for violence, leaned in to kiss her cheek in congratulation, Crispin saw the color drain from Ophelia's face. Interesting. Tarquin was an attractive man in the conventional sense. Tall, dark hair, aristocratic features. But there was cruelty in his eyes. The kind of cruelty that Crispin recognized, because he had used it himself when necessary. The difference was that Crispin never used it on the weak. Blackwood, he suspected, made no such distinction. The vows of silence. The presidential suite at the Four Seasons was elegant, all clean lines and modern luxury. White flowers filled every surface, champagne chilling, chocolate on the pillows, a romantic trap for a sham marriage. Crispin had loosened his tie and poured himself a whiskey while waiting for Ophelia to emerge from the bathroom. She had gone in there 20 minutes ago, still in her wedding dress. When she finally emerged, she had changed into an ivory silk nightgown that was beautiful and appropriately bridal. But the way she wore it, tugging at the long sleeves, and adjusting the high neckline, told him everything he needed to know. She was armoring herself for battle. "You don't have to be afraid," Crispin had said, keeping his distance. "I'm not a monster." She had looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw something real in her eyes, disbelief, as if every man in her life had told her exactly the same thing, right before proving otherwise. "You can sleep in the bed," he continued, observing her reaction. "I'll take the sofa." "No." Her voice came quick, almost panicked. "No, I can sleep on the sofa." "Ophelia, please." She bit her lip, and Crispin saw her eyes fill with tears she fought to contain. I just need—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Crispin had nodded, stepped back, given her space. But something inside him, something primitive and protective that he didn't know he possessed, had roared at the sight of this broken woman trying to negotiate her own safety on her wedding night. That night, Ophelia had slept on the far side of the king-size bed, fully dressed, with 3 pillows as a barrier between them. Crispin had remained awake until dawn, watching her tremble, even in sleep. The signs. The following 3 days were a masterclass in reading invisible signals. Ophelia moved through Crispin's Lincoln Park mansion like a ghost. Silent, efficient, practically invisible. She organized his meals with catering staff, made sure his suits were pressed, responded when spoken to, and disappeared when not. The perfect wife, or rather, the perfectly trained wife. Crispin began noticing patterns. She never touched him first. If their hands accidentally brushed when passing the salt shaker, she withdrew as if burned. She never raised her voice. Even when the staff made mistakes, food too salty, a room poorly cleaned, she simply smiled and said it was fine. She never asked for anything. When Crispin asked what she wanted for dinner, she responded, "Whatever you prefer is fine." Movies. Anything. House temperature. It's perfect like this. But the most revealing sign came on the 4th day. Crispin had returned early from a meeting in the Loop, entering the house unannounced. He had heard voices in the kitchen, Ophelia talking with Clementine, the housekeeper, and had stopped in the hallway upon hearing her tone. Real. Warm. Alive. "My mother used to make that kind of bread," Ophelia was saying with genuine laughter in her voice. I tried to help, but always ended up covered in flour." Then she heard his footsteps. Crispin saw the instant change when he entered the kitchen. The light in Ophelia's eyes extinguished. Her posture adjusted. The smile became polite, distant. The ghost had returned. "Crispin," she said softly, "I didn't expect you back so early. Would you like me to prepare something?" He had declined, studying her. Clementine, who had worked for him for 10 years, had also noticed the change. The look she directed at Crispin contained questions and something like concern. That night, Crispin had made a decision. He was going to find out what had happened to Ophelia Fairfax, and whoever was responsible was going to wish they had never been born. The night everything changed, Crispin had planned to be patient, observe, wait for her to trust him. Fate had other plans. On the 6th night of their marriage, Crispin was awakened by a sound that froze his blood, a strangled scream followed by muffled sobs. He rose immediately, crossing the meters separating his side of the bed from hers. Ophelia was trapped in a nightmare, her body writhing, her hands pushing against invisible enemies. "No," she moaned. "Please, not anymore. I'm sorry. Ophelia." Crispin reached out to touch her shoulder, to wake her. The moment his fingers made contact, She woke with a scream of absolute terror and attacked. It wasn't a trained attack. It was pure panic, nails seeking eyes, fists striking without technique, just animal desperation. Crispin caught her wrists, carefully, without hurting her, and said her name over and over until she focused. When she finally saw him, really saw Crispin, not whoever populated her nightmares, the horror on her face nearly destroyed him. I'm sorry, she whispered and began trembling so violently that Crispin could feel the vibrations through his hands. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have. I didn't mean. You're safe. Crispin's voice came out rougher than he intended. It was a nightmare. You're safe. But she wasn't listening. She was entering full panic, hyperventilating, her eyes becoming glassy. Panic attack, Crispin recognized. He had seen enough in war veterans and violence survivors. Ophelia, look at me. He released her wrists, gave her space. Breathe with me. In, out. It didn't work. She was drowning in her own fear. Crispin did the only thing he could think of. Went to the bathroom, wet a towel with cold water, and returned. May I? He asked, showing her the towel. She nodded weakly. When he pressed the cold towel to her forehead and cheeks, some of the panic began to recede. Ophelia closed her eyes, focusing on the physical sensation. Good, Crispin murmured. That's good. Just breathe. Several minutes passed before her breathing regulated. When she opened her eyes, tears had left shining trails on her cheeks. Better, Crispin asked softly. She nodded but didn't speak. She was staring at something beyond him, lost in her own thoughts. That's when Crispin noticed it. During the struggle, the neckline of her nightgown had slipped to one side. Not much, just enough to reveal more of her shoulder, more bruises. But not just that. In the lamplight, he could now see the full extent, marks that continued under the fabric, a pattern, system, prolonged abuse. His blood turned to ice, then to fire. Ophelia, he said, keeping his voice controlled with monumental effort. Who did this to you? She followed his gaze, saw what he was seeing, and paled. Her hands flew to cover the marks, but it was too late. Nobody, she whispered. I fell. Don't lie. It wasn't an order, but it wasn't a request either. Not to me. Not about this. The tears began falling again, silent and devastating. I can't, she said in a broken voice. If I say something, he. A single word that revealed everything. Crispin felt something ancient and violent awaken in his chest, the part of him that had built an empire with his own hands. In the part that didn't tolerate weakness in others, but mercilessly punished those who hurt the defenseless. Look at me, he said, and when she finally did, Crispin held her gaze with an intensity that had made experienced capos look away. Listen to me carefully, Ophelia. You're my wife now. That means you're under my protection. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to touch you again. Do you understand? You don't understand. She shook her head, more tears falling. He's too powerful. He has connections. He has... I don't care if he's the president of the United States. Crispin's voice was pure steel now. If he put his hands on you, if he hurt you, he's going to answer to me. For the first time since he met her, Crispin saw something different in Ophelia's eyes. Not fear, not submission. Hope, small, fragile, barely alive. But there. Tarquin, she finally whispered, and the word came out like a confession, torn from the deepest part of her soul. Tarquin Blackwood. Crispin's world stopped. Then it exploded in cold, calculated fury. Tarquin Blackwood, his sister-in-law's fiancé. Future ally of the Fairfax family, a man who, apparently, had been using Ophelia as his personal victim. How long? The question came out quiet, but there was death in every syllable. 5 years. Her voice was barely audible. Since I turned 21. My father thought it was a good alliance. Tarquin and Cordelia. But Tarquin decided I was more interesting. Crispin closed his eyes, fighting to maintain control. 5 years. She was 26. This had begun when she was barely an adult. Does your father know? Ophelia's laugh was bitter, broken. No. He handed me over to Tarquin to train me. Said I needed to learn to be a proper wife before it was time to marry. Woof, that Tarquin would teach me. Obedience. Son of a bitch. Montague Fairfax had handed his own daughter to a sadist to train her, had used her as practice, as an object. And then he had sold her to Crispin as a consolation prize in a business deal. The marks, Crispin said, and had to force himself to continue. Are they all from him? Ophelia nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. He was careful, nothing where it could be seen, nothing photographs could capture. He always said I was his secret, his special project. The room seemed to shrink. Crispin felt his control, that famous control that had kept him alive in a world where weakness meant death, begin to crack. Why didn't you escape? He asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Where? Ophelia looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, survived too much. My father would have returned me to him. My mother died when I was 14. Cordelia, she doesn't know. Nobody knows. And Tarquin made it very clear what would happen if I told anyone. What would happen? That he'd kill Clementine. The answer was simple, devastating. The housekeeper's daughter at my father's estate. She's 6 years old. Tarquin showed me photos of where she goes to school, her route home, told me he could make it look like an accident, and that it would be my fault. Crispin felt something break inside him. It wasn't his heart. He had closed that part of himself years ago. It was his morality, his code, the lines he had drawn between himself and monsters. Because in that moment, he realized he was willing to cross every one of those lines. For her, for this broken woman who had survived 5 years of hell and still found strength to protect a child who wasn't even her family. Look at me, he said, waiting until her eyes met his. I'm going to make you a promise, Ophelia. And when I make promises, I keep them. Tarquin Blackwood is never going to touch you again. The child will be protected. And every man who knew what he was doing to you and did nothing is going to answer for his cowardice. You can't, she began. I can, and I will. He leaned forward, holding her gaze. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? The silence stretched between them, loaded with years of trauma, learned fear, punished hope. Finally, Ophelia nodded. It was a small movement, barely perceptible. For Crispin, it was a declaration of war. The blood promise Crispin didn't sleep the rest of the night. While Ophelia finally sank into exhausted sleep, this time without nightmares, perhaps because, for the first time in years, someone stood between her and her demons. He sat in the chair by the window, his phone glowing in the darkness. Call after call, message after message. By the time dawn painted Chicago's sky in shades of pink and gold, Crispin had mobilized his entire organization. Barnaby, his right-hand man, was the first to arrive at the mansion. Boss, he said, entering the study with the efficiency of a man who had been woken at 5 a.m. with an emergency order. What do you need? Crispin handed him a handwritten list. Protection for a child. Clementine Winters, 6 years old, daughter of staff at the Fairfax estate in New York. A 24-hour surveillance, not visible but total. If anyone who isn't family or authorized staff approaches her, I want to know. If Tarquin Blackwood or any of his men is within 5 miles of her, I want immediate intervention. Barnaby read the list, his eyebrows rising progressively. This is maximum priority, above everything else. Understood? Barnaby hesitated. The rest of the list? Crispin smiled, but there was no humor in the expression. It was the smile that had made him famous in Chicago's underworld. The one that meant someone had signed their death sentence. Information on Tarquin Blackwood. I want to know every move he makes, every business he has, every secret he keeps, financial trails, lovers, enemies, weaknesses, everything. That's going to cause ripples, Barnaby warned. Blackwood is engaged to your wife's sister. Investigating him could be seen as exactly what it is. Crispin stood, walking to the window overlooking the garden. Prepare yourself, Barnaby. We're going to war. Against the Blackwoods? Against Tarquin Blackwood specifically. Crispin turned and Barnaby stepped back at the cold fury in his eyes. And against anyone who allowed that son of a bitch to hurt someone under my protection. Barnaby, who had been with Crispin for 15 years, who had seen territorial wars and bloody betrayals, had never seen his boss like this. This wasn't business, this was personal. What did he do? He asked softly. Crispin considered how much to say. Finally, he abused my wife for 5 years, with the knowledge, if not approval, of her own father. He used her as a training object while preparing to marry her sister. The silence that followed was absolute. Son of a bitch, Barnaby finally murmured. Yes, Crispin returned to his desk, opening a drawer and taking out a gun. He checked it methodically, full magazine, safety on, before placing it in his waistband. That's why I need you to be careful. This is going to explode. When it does, I need our people ready. What are you going to do? Crispin looked at the ceiling where he knew Ophelia still slept. I'm going to break every rule I've lived by. I'm going to destroy alliances that took decades to build. And I'm going to send a message so clear that never, never will anyone think they can touch what's mine again. The public confrontation. Tarquin Blackwood made his first mistake 3 days after Crispin made his promise to Ophelia. He showed up at the Lincoln Park mansion uninvited. Crispin was in his study when he heard the commotion in the main foyer. Raised voices, the firm tone of Alistair, his head of security, denying entry. And then the voice that made Ophelia tremble in her sleep. I'm here to see Ophelia. As future brother-in-law, I have every right. Crispin moved. By the time he reached the foyer, he found Tarquin trying to push his way past Alistair. He was younger than Crispin remembered from the wedding, 32, maybe 33, with the kind of handsomeness that came from privilege and expensive gyms. But his eyes contained exactly the kind of cruelty that Crispin had seen in men who enjoyed hurting others. Predators who chose victims who couldn't defend themselves. Tarquin. Crispin's voice cut through the air like a whip. I don't recall inviting you in my home. Tarquin turned, his expression showing irritation, before adjusting to something more diplomatic. Crispin, apologies for the unannounced visit. I just wanted to check how Ophelia's adjusting to her new life. She's fine. I'd like to see her, to make sure personally. No. The word fell like a stone. Tarquin blinked, clearly unaccustomed to being refused so directly. Pardon? Ophelia is resting. Crispin moved forward, each step calculated to invade Tarquin's space. And in the future, if you want to visit her, you'll need to coordinate with me first. Something dark passed across Tarquin's face. We've known each other for years. I'm practically family. You're her sister's fiancé. That doesn't give you rights over my wife. Interesting choice of words. Your wife, Tarquin smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. So possessive already. I thought this was a business marriage. Whatever my marriage is none of your business. Ophelia might feel differently. We've always been close. Crispin saw red. Every killer instinct he had cultivated during 25 years in organized crime screamed at him to pull his gun and blow this bastard's head off right there. But he didn't, because that would be the easy way. And Tarquin Blackwood didn't deserve the easy way. He deserved to suffer. Instead, Crispin smiled. And it was the smile that preceded violence, recognized by anyone in his world. Let me be very clear, Blackwood, he said, his voice dropping to a tone only Tarquin could hear. If you come to my home uninvited again, if you approach Ophelia without my explicit permission, if you call her, if you contact her in any way, I'm going to consider it a direct threat. And do you know how I respond to threats? Tarquin had paled. He might be a sadist who enjoyed terrorizing defenseless women, but he wasn't stupid. He knew exactly who Crispin Ashworth was and what he could do. This is a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. Crispin moved closer until they were almost nose to nose. Stay away from my wife, or I'll show you exactly why Chicago belongs to me. The silence that followed was tense, loaded with unexpressed violence. Finally, Tarquin backed down. Of course, he said, his voice tight. I meant no offense. I'll tell Cordelia that Ophelia is settling in well. You do that. Crispin watched him leave, every muscle tense until Tarquin's car disappeared through the front gate. Only then did he sense the presence behind him. Ophelia stood at the foot of the stairs, her face pale as death. Did you hear? Crispin asked. She nodded, her eyes enormous. This is going to make him see you as a threat. Crispin, you don't understand. Tarquin, when he feels threatened, he's not going to do anything. Crispin crossed to her, stopping at a respectful distance. Because the next time he touches you, the next time he scares you, the next time he makes you cry, I'm going to destroy him. He has allies, power. My father. Your father, Crispin interrupted, and now there was edge in his voice. Handed his own daughter to a monster. His opinion stopped mattering to me the moment I knew the truth. Tears began to fill Ophelia's eyes. But this time they weren't from fear. They were from something she had forgotten how to feel, relief. Nobody has. I'm not nobody. Crispin extended his hand, an offer, not a demand. And you're never alone again. Ophelia looked at his hand for a long moment, then, slowly, placed hers in it. It was the first time she had touched him voluntarily. Crispin felt that trembling hand in his and made a silent vow. For this woman, for this survivor who had endured 5 years of hell and still found courage to trust again, he would burn the entire world, if necessary. Tarquin Blackwood was a dead man walking. He just didn't know it yet. The discovery. Barnaby returned with information 3 days later. What he brought made even Crispin, who thought he had seen everything, feel nauseated. It's not just Ophelia, Barnaby said, sliding files across the desk. Photographs, statements, evidence compiled with the brutal efficiency that had made Barnaby the perfect second in command. Blackwood has a pattern. Crispin opened the first file. A young woman, no more than 22, bruised face. Police statement that was never pursued due to lack of evidence. Second file, another woman. This one with a broken arm. Same story, complaint mysteriously withdrawn. Third, fourth, fifth, 8 women total over the last 7 years, all young, all connected to organized crime families, all silenced. Son of a bitch, Crispin murmured. There's more. Barnaby pulled out another file, this one thicker. Business. Blackwood has been diverting money from his family's operations, investing in, Christ, boss, human trafficking. The world stopped. What? Trafficking. Specifically young women. He has a network operating from New York to Miami. The police statements I found, the ones that were buried, mention a club in Brooklyn, a private operation where wealthy men can fuck. Crispin closed his eyes, feeling fury transform into something colder, more lethal. Tarquin Blackwood wasn't just an abuser, he was a trafficker. Does anyone else know? His father probably does. He's protecting Tarquin, burying evidence. Barnaby hesitated. Montague Fairfax. There's no clear evidence he knew about the trafficking. But he had to know about the abuse. Too many women, too many incidents. And he still handed Ophelia over to that monster. It wasn't a question. Crispin stood, walking to the window overlooking Chicago, his city, his empire, built on rules, code, honor among thieves. One of those codes was simple. You don't harm innocents. You don't traffic people. You don't cross certain lines. Tarquin Blackwood had crossed all of them. Barnaby, Crispin said without turning. Call a meeting. I want our key allies here tomorrow, all of them. Are you going to tell them about Tarquin? I'm going to give them a choice. He finally turned and Barnaby saw death in his eyes. Either they're with me when I destroy the Blackwoods, or they step aside. But nobody is going to protect that son of a bitch when I'm done with him. The broken alliance. The meeting was at the River North loft that Crispin used for delicate business. 9 families represented. Men who controlled everything from drugs to construction, gambling to port cargo. Crispin entered with Ophelia at his side. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. "Gentlemen," Crispin began, his voice calm but loaded with authority. "I appreciate you coming on such short notice." "What's this about, Ashworth?" asked Rupert Sterling, a Milwaukee capo. "Interrupting business on a Tuesday for a meeting with no agenda." "The agenda is simple." Crispin pressed a button, and the screens in the room came to life, showing the photos Barnaby had compiled. Beaten women, police reports, financial evidence of trafficking. Tarquin Blackwood has been operating a human trafficking network under his family's protection. The silence now was different, uncomfortable. "Those are serious accusations," said Evander Cross, a Newark veteran. Blackwood is a respected family." "Do you have proof?" "More than proof." Crispin deployed more files. "I have 8 victims willing to testify. I have financial records. I have operation locations. And I have direct testimony." He looked at Ophelia. She was pale, but steady. "Tarquin Blackwood abused me for 5 years, she said, her voice clear, despite the tremor. "With the knowledge and permission of my father, who handed me over to him as training to be a proper wife. He told me that if I told anyone, he would kill an innocent child. And now I know I'm not the only one. He's hurt other women, used them, sold them." The shock in the room was palpable. "This is Christ," Rupert muttered. "Fairfax knew?" "He allowed it to happen," Crispin said, "which makes him complicit." "You can't be suggesting we go against the Fairfaxes and the Blackwoods," Evander said. Those alliances are built on innocent blood." Crispin stood, dominating the room. "Our code, the code we all live by, is clear. We don't hurt innocents. We don't traffic people. We don't allow predators to operate under our protection. Blackwood has powerful friends." "More powerful than this?" Crispin deployed the final photo. Clementine, the 6-year-old girl Tarquin had threatened to kill. "Are you going to defend a man who threatens to murder children to keep his crimes hidden?" The silence stretched. Finally, Rupert Sterling stood. I'm with you," he said simply. "My family doesn't protect traffickers or child abusers." One by one, others stood. Not all. 3 families remained seated, their loyalties clearly with the old alliances. But 6 stood with Crispin. It was enough. "Then it's decided," Crispin said. "Tarquin Blackwood will be brought to justice, by our hands, under our code." Evander Cross, one of those who remained seated, spoke with a tense voice. "Ashworth, if you do this, the Blackwoods will come after you. The Fairfaxes will come after you. You'll start a war that could fracture everything we've built." Crispin looked at the older man with eyes that showed no regret. "Then let there be war," he said, "because some things are worth more than peace." He looked at Ophelia, who watched him with something like awe on her face. "Some people are worth fighting for." Training in the shadows. Again, Ophelia was breathing hard, her body soaked in sweat as she held the gun with both hands. The sight, the target, exhale, bang. The bullet hit 2 inches right of center. "Better," Crispin said from behind her, "but you're still anticipating the recoil. Relax. Trust the gun." 2 weeks had passed since the meeting. 2 weeks of preparation while Crispin compiled irrefutable evidence against Tarquin. 2 weeks of growing tension as lines were drawn and alliances solidified. And 2 weeks of training Ophelia to defend herself. It had been her idea. "If there's going to be war," she had said the morning after the meeting, with eyes that still contained fear but something stronger now, "then I want to be able to protect myself. Never again do I want to feel helpless." Crispin had hesitated, not from machismo, but from genuine concern. He didn't want her to have to dirty her hands with violence, but Ophelia had insisted. "Teach me," she had said. "Please." So here they were, in the private shooting range in the mansion's basement. Ophelia learning to shoot, to fight, to defend herself, and to Crispin's surprise, she was good. There was fear. It would always be there, scars from 5 years of trauma, but also determination. Channeled rage, survivor becoming warrior. "One more," she said, reloading. Crispin watched as she positioned herself. This time when she fired, the bullet pierced the center of the target. The triumphant cry she let out, pure, unrehearsed, made something in Crispin's chest tighten. "Well done," he said, approaching. "Joe, but remember, guns are last resort. Your best defense is always knowledge and distance," she finished, repeating what he had said dozens of times. "I know." She turned to him, and Crispin saw the change in her posture. Still cautious but not broken. Still scarred but no longer just victim. "Thank you," she said softly. "For this. For everything." "You don't have to thank me for—" "Yes, I do." Ophelia put the gun on the table with the safety on, then looked at him directly. "My whole life men have taken from me. My father sold me. Tarquin used me. Nobody ever asked what I wanted. Nobody taught me to be strong. Only to be obedient." Her eyes shone, but not with tears, with fire. "You're the first man who has given me power instead of taking it. The first who has treated me as a person, not property. So yes, I'm gonna thank you. Every day if necessary." Crispin had no words. For the first time in his adult life, in 25 years of navigating the dangers of organized crime, he was completely disarmed by a 5'3" woman with honey-colored eyes and trauma turned to determination. "Ophelia." The sound of his phone cut off whatever he had been about to say. "Barnaby." "Boss," his second-in-command's tense voice said. "We have movement. Tarquin just arrived in the city, with 12 men." The moment broke. Crispin saw fear return instantly to Ophelia's face. "Where?" "They checked into the Drake." "But Crispin, one of our contacts on his team says they're planning something for tonight. Something involving Ophelia." Ophelia paled. He's not going to do anything." Crispin took her hand, gentle but firm. "Because he's not getting near you. Barnaby, double security here. I want eyes on the Drake. If Tarquin moves a finger toward Lincoln Park, I want to know." "Understood. And the child, Clementine?" "Still under surveillance." "Yes, team of 6, rotation every 8 hours. She's safe." "Good. Keep it that way." When he hung up, Ophelia was looking at him with a strange expression. "What?" Crispin asked. "You assigned 6 men to protect a child you don't know, a child who isn't even family. She's important to you. That makes her important to me." The tears came then, but these were different. Not from pain, but from something Ophelia had forgotten. Gratitude, awe, the beginning of something that could, eventually, become love. "Crispin Ashworth," she said softly, "you're the most dangerous man I've ever met. And also, the kindest." He smiled, a real smile, not the mask he showed the world. "Those two aren't mutually exclusive." "I know." She moved closer, closing the distance between them. For the first time since their wedding night, she was the one initiating contact. Her hand touching his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "That's why I trust you." Crispin covered her hand with his. "Whatever happens tonight," he said, "you're safe, I promise you." He didn't know then how soon he would have to keep that promise. The trap. The call came at 11:47 p.m. Crispin was in his study, reviewing security reports when his phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally he wouldn't answer, but something, instinct sharpened by decades of surviving in a treacherous world, told him to respond. Ashworth. A male voice, unknown, nervous. I have information about Tarquin Blackwood." "Who is this?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is I know where he is now, and I know what he's planning." Crispin tensed. "Speak." "He's at a warehouse in South Side. Empty, scheduled for demolition next week. He has someone there. A woman. Says she was his property. That he's going to teach her a lesson about loyalty." The world stopped. Describe the woman. Brown hair, small, terrified. I don't know the name, but Tarquin keeps calling her his special project. Ophelia. Impossible. Ophelia was upstairs in her room, with security at every entry point. Unless Crispin was running before the thought completed. Up the stairs, 2 at a time, gun in hand. The bedroom door was open. The bed was empty. Alistair. Crispin's roar shook the house, and his head of security appeared in seconds. Boss, where's Ophelia? Alistair paled. She was here 30 minutes ago. Routine check. How did she get out? I don't know. The sensors didn't show. Crispin didn't wait for more explanations. He dialed Barnaby. Ophelia's been taken. Warehouse and South Side, pending demolition. Gather everyone, now. Boss, could be a trap. I know. Come anyway. He hung up, went down the stairs like a storm. His mind was already calculating. Tarquin wasn't stupid. This was bait, a trap designed specifically for him. But it didn't matter, because if he really had Ophelia, if that son of a bitch had touched her again, Crispin was going to make him bleed in ways that would make hardened men beg for death. And he reached his car, an armored Range Rover, just as Barnaby and 6 of his men arrived. Plan? Barnaby asked as they settled in. Go in. Get her out. Kill anyone who gets in the way. Crispin, non-negotiable. He looked at his second-in-command with eyes that had ordered executions and seen wars. If I have to choose between peace and her, I choose her, every time. Barnaby nodded slowly. Then let's bring her back. The drive to South Side took 23 minutes. They were the longest 23 minutes of Crispin's life. The revelation. The warehouse was exactly what they expected. Deteriorated brick structure, broken windows, no trespassing signs nailed to rotting doors. It was also a perfect trap. 2 cars outside, Barnaby murmured, watching through binoculars from their position half a block back. Black sedan. Ichis UV, probably 8 men, plus Tarquin. Distribution. 4 outside, the rest inside, armed. Crispin checked his own weapon, Glock 19, full magazine, 2 spares, and looked at his men. Barnaby, you and Atticus take the back entrance. Rupert with me at the front. The rest, perimeter. Nobody enters or leaves without my order. And if it's a bigger trap? Atticus asked. If they have more men waiting? Then we kill them too. Crispin opened the car door. But first I get my wife back. They moved like ghosts, training and years of working together, turning them into a silent machine. The outside guards fell without sound. Precise, effective strikes. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of metal columns and abandoned equipment. Dim light filtering through dirty windows, and then Crispin heard her, female voice, screaming. Not in pain, in fury. He ran toward the sound, Rupert on his heels. They rounded a column and stopped dead. Ophelia was there, but not as a victim. She was standing over Tarquin Blackwood, who was on the ground, bleeding from his nose, with his own gun pointed directly at his head. Don't touch me, she was saying, her voice trembling but firm. But they, never again. 3 of Tarquin's men were unconscious around her. 2 others had their hands up, clearly not knowing what to do in the face of the transformation of the docile victim they expected. And then she saw Crispin. For a moment, they just looked at each other. He saw the gun in her hands, the same one she had used to practice that afternoon. He saw the marks on her arms where someone had tried to grab her. He saw the fierce determination in her eyes. He saw the survivor reclaiming her power. Ophelia, he said softly, are you all right? They drugged me, she responded without taking the gun off Tarquin. In my tea. I woke up here. He thought... She laughed, a bitter sound. He thought I'd be terrified, helpless, like always. But you weren't. No. She looked at the man at her feet, who watched her with a mixture of shock and terror. I'm not that girl anymore, Tarquin. You killed her years ago, but what you left behind is something you should have feared. Tarquin spat blood. Stupid bitch. You think this ends here? My family? The bullet Ophelia fired pierced the concrete 2 inches from his head. Speak again, she said coldly, and the next one won't miss. Crispin felt something like pride flood his chest, but also concern. Because killing, even when justified, leaves scars. Ophelia, he said gently, moving toward her. Lower the gun. It's over. It's not over, her voice cracked slightly. Not until he pays, not until all the women he hurt have justice. And they will, I promise you, but not like this, not by your hand. Why not? Tears now sliding down her cheeks. Why do I have to be better than him? Why can't I? Because you are better than him. Crispin was beside her now, his hand gently covering hers on the gun. And because killing him won't give you back those 5 years. Won't erase the pain. It will only add more darkness to your soul. Then what? She was sobbing now. I just let him go. No. Crispin gently took the gun from her, placing it in his own waistband. I hand him over to those who can ensure he never hurts anyone again. Who? Crispin smiled without humor. In our world, there are punishments worse than death, and Tarquin Blackwood is going to experience every one of them. He looked at Barnaby, who had arrived with Atticus. Take him. Call our contacts at the FBI. Hand over all the evidence on the trafficking. Make sure every possible charge is filed. Wait! Tarquin tried to get up. Crispin stepped him back to the ground, applying enough pressure to make clear who was in control. You're going to federal prison, Crispin said conversationally, and I'm personally going to make sure every criminal you've hurt knows exactly where you are. Human traffickers don't survive long in prison, Tarquin. Especially not when the King of Chicago passes word that you're open season. The terror on Tarquin's face was satisfying. As Crispin's men dragged him away, Crispin turned to Ophelia. She was trembling, adrenaline finally giving way to shock. Come here, he said softly. For the first time she went to him without hesitation. She sank into his arms, sobbing against his chest as he held her, one hand stroking her hair. You did it, he murmured against her head. You survived. You fought. You won. I was afraid, she admitted. Being brave isn't not being afraid. It's acting despite it. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Ophelia, listen to me. What you did tonight, defending yourself, standing your ground, that took more courage than anything I've ever done. I couldn't have done it without you, without the training, without feeling safe enough to fight back. That courage was always in you. It just needed space to grow. He held her again, and as he did, Crispin made a silent vow. He wouldn't just protect this woman. He would love her as she deserved to be loved, completely, fiercely, without conditions. And anyone who tried to hurt her again would have to go through his dead body first. The shadow trial. The following weeks were an earthquake. Tarquin Blackwood was arrested in a coordinated FBI local raid. The charges, human trafficking, kidnapping, aggravated assault, plus a dozen charges related to his criminal network. But the real trial occurred in the shadows. Montague Fairfax attempted to use his influence to protect Tarquin. He called in old favors, pressured allies, threatened war. Crispin destroyed every attempt methodically. Photos of the victims, including Ophelia, were circulated among the families. Evidence of the trafficking was presented in a special meeting of the Commission, the governing body of organized crime on the East Coast. The vote was unanimous. Tarquin Blackwood would be declared foris legis, outside the law. No protection. Open season. Montague Fairfax, for allowing the abuses, lost his position as patriarch. His family was fractured, territory divided among other organizations. Cordelia, Ophelia's sister, publicly broke her engagement, renouncing her family to start a new life in California. And in federal prison, Tarquin Blackwood learned the meaning of fear. Crispin had kept his promise. Every criminal Tarquin had crossed, every prisoner who had connection to trafficking victims, they knew exactly where to find him. He didn't survive the first month. The official report. Fight in the yard. multiple assailants. Death by blunt force trauma. The truth. Justice, served slowly and without mercy. When Crispin told Ophelia that Tarquin was dead, he expected to see satisfaction, maybe even joy. What he saw was peace. "Is it over?" she asked softly. "Is it really over?" "It's over," he confirmed. "Nobody who hurt you is coming back, ever." She cried then, not from sadness, but from relief, so deep it was almost pain. And Crispin held her as she released 5 years of trauma, fear, contained rage. He held her until there were no more tears left. Then he held her a little longer, because finally he could do so without her trembling. 6 months later, the Lincoln Park mansion had changed. Ophelia had transformed it from fortress to home. Flowers in every room, art on the walls, not expensive but meaningful. Photographs of moments, her and Crispin at Navy Pier, laughing at something he had said. Clementine, the child they had protected, visiting for her 7th birthday, smiling brightly. The nightmares still came sometimes. But now, when Ophelia woke with a scream trapped in her throat, Crispin was there. Not touching her until she gave permission, but present. Anchor in the storm, and slowly, painfully, Ophelia was healing. Therapy helped. Twice a week with a trauma specialist. Crispin never asked what they discussed, but he saw the changes, the way she began to laugh more easily, the way her back straightened, her voice strengthened, the way she started taking up space in the world instead of making herself small. On the way she began to look at him, not with fear or gratitude, but with something warmer, deeper, desire. The first time. The night everything changed began simply. Dinner at home. Just the two of them, no staff. Ophelia had cooked, insisting despite Crispin's protests, and the result was delicious. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked, savoring the perfect chicken. "My mother." Ophelia smiled, but this time it was a happy smile, remembering love, not pain. Before she died, we spent hours in the kitchen. She said cooking was love made visible. She was right. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Fire crackling, wine, conversation flowing naturally about everything and nothing. At some point, Ophelia moved closer on the sofa. Not so much that it was inappropriate, but enough that Crispin could feel her warmth. "Crispin," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why have you never?" She paused, searching for words. "We've been married for almost 7 months, and you've never tried." Crispin understood what she wasn't saying. "Because it's not about what I want," he said simply. "It's about what you want. When you're ready. If you're ready. And if you're never ready, that's okay too." Ophelia looked at him with shining eyes. "And if I told you I'm ready?" The air between them changed. Charged. "Then I would ask if you're sure," Crispin said, voice low. "Because there's no rush, Ophelia. We have a lifetime." "I know." She took his hand, a gesture that had begun as terrifying and now was natural. "And I know there's a difference between being ready and feeling pressure. But this is what I want. You are what I want." She leaned in, and Crispin remained perfectly still, letting her set every term. When her lips touched his, it was gentle, tentative, a question that he answered by staying motionless, letting her explore. She pulled back, studying his face. "Crispin, tell me what you need. I need you to be patient. I need you to go slow. I need—" Her voice cracked slightly. "I need to know I can stop this at any moment and you won't be angry. We could stop right now if you want, and I will never, never be angry at you for taking care of yourself." He lifted her hand, kissing her knuckles. "You're in control, Ophelia. Completely." Tears slid down her cheeks, but this time from relief. "Then take me upstairs," she whispered, "and show me how it should be. How it feels when someone loves you instead of owning you." Crispin stood, extending his hand. She took it without hesitation. What followed was slow, reverent, every touch requested and granted. Every kiss paused when she needed it. Every moment designed not for his pleasure, but for her comfort. Crispin showed her what it was to be adored, venerated, loved without pain attached. And when they finally joined, her on top, in complete control, setting every rhythm, the tears that fell were of liberation. 5 years of trauma didn't disappear that night, but they began to transform into something different, into reclaimed power, into pleasure experienced on her own terms, into real love given by a man who valued her consent over his own satisfaction. Afterward, as they lay intertwined, Ophelia traced the scars on Crispin's chest with curious fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For waiting for me. For letting me decide. For everything." Crispin kissed her forehead. "Ophelia, understand something. I wasn't waiting for you to be ready so I could have you. I was waiting because loving you means honoring your timing, your healing, your needs." She looked up, eyes filled with something that made him feel simultaneously humbled and fierce. "I love you," she said. First words. First acknowledgement of feeling that had grown between trauma and transformation. "I love you," he responded, because it was true, completely, irrevocably. "And if anyone tries to hurt you again, they'll have to go through me first." She smiled, fierce and beautiful. "Din, we're a good team. We're invincible." The foundation was Ophelia's idea. "I want to help," she had said one day over breakfast. "Other women like me, who are trapped, scared, with nowhere to go." Crispin had listened, then mobilized every resource he had. 6 months later, the Rebirth Foundation opened its doors. Safe shelters for victims of domestic abuse and trafficking. Free therapy. Job training. Legal assistance. All funded by Crispin's criminal empire, washing blood-stained money into something beautiful. Ophelia ran the foundation with passion and skill no one had suspected. Her story, shared anonymously at first, then openly when she felt strong enough, inspired dozens of women to come forward. Each one who passed through their doors called her savior. But Ophelia knew the truth. They had saved each other. On their wedding anniversary, Crispin took her back to the Four Seasons. Same suite, same hotel. But everything different. This time, when they entered the room, Ophelia didn't back away. She walked in, smiling, taking his hand, leading him to the bed where a year ago she had begged him not to touch her. "Remember?" she asked, tracing the duvet. "Every second," Crispin admitted. "I was the most frightened woman in the world that night." "And now?" Ophelia turned to him, eyes bright with tears and joy in equal measure. "Now I'm the most loved." 3 months later, Ophelia gave him the news. Pregnant. Crispin, who had faced death threats without blinking, cried when he saw the positive test. "We're going to be a family," he had murmured against her hair. "We're already a family," she had corrected. But now we're expanding it." The baby, a girl they named Aurora for new beginnings, was born in spring, and when Crispin held her for the first time, making silent promises of protection and love, Ophelia watched her husband become a father. The most dangerous man in Chicago, reduced to tears by a 7-pound creature. "What are you thinking?" she asked when he finally looked up. "I'm thinking," Crispin said, voice thick with emotion, "that we're proof that even the most broken things can heal. That love can grow in dark places. That surviving isn't just living but thriving." Ophelia took his free hand, intertwining their fingers. "We're proof that sometimes the most dangerous man is exactly who you need to keep you safest. And that the most fragile woman can hold the fiercest strength." They looked at their daughter, and this new beginning, born from transformed tragedy. "What will we tell her when she's older?" Ophelia asked. "About how we met? About everything?" Crispin considered it carefully. "We'll tell her the truth, that her mother is the bravest woman I know. that she survived hell and emerged not bitter but compassionate, that her strength comes from healing, not from never being broken. And her father will tell her that her father learned what strength really means from her mother, that true love isn't about possession but protection, and that the best things in life, her included, are born from moments of choice when we choose to become better versions of ourselves. Ophelia kissed his cheek. "She's going to love you as much as I do. As long as I have both of you," Crispin said. "I have everything I need." Years later, when Aurora asked about the faint scars on her mother's shoulders, Ophelia told her the truth. About the darkness she had survived, about the man who had saved her by teaching her to save herself, about how love can be weapon and shield, strength and gentleness. "Did Daddy save you, Mummy?" Aurora asked. "No, darling." Ophelia looked at Crispin across the room, their eyes meeting in shared understanding. "Your father gave me the tools to save myself, and then he loved me while I did it." "That's," Aurora said with all the seriousness of a 5-year-old, "the most romantic story ever." Crispin laughed, pulling them both into his arms. "It's not just romantic," he said. "It's true." And that, more than anything, was the lesson they wanted Aurora to learn. That real love isn't a fairy tale where a prince rescues a maiden. It's two broken people choosing to heal together. It's strength recognizing strength. It's protection offered freely and consent honored always. It's everything they had built, everything they were, everything they would always be. Some love stories are born in light. Theirs was born in absolute darkness, forged in fire and blood, built on the ruins of trauma, and transformed by the unwavering determination to survive. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. It wasn't fast. Trust takes time. But it was real. More real than any perfect romance could be. Because they chose. Every day, every moment, they chose. He chose to see her humanity when others saw property. She chose to trust when every instinct screamed to run. Together they chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of nightmare. And in the end, and that choice, that daily commitment to love each other not despite their wounds, but by honoring them, was what made their love unbreakable. Some would say she was lucky, but luck doesn't capture the truth. The truth is that Ophelia survived because she was a warrior, not because she was rescued. The truth is that Crispin transformed because he chose to grow, not because he was saved. And the truth is that together they proved something the world needs to understand. That love isn't about completing another person. It's about giving them space to complete themselves, while standing beside them. Can love be born from the ashes of trauma? Can the most dangerous man be the gentlest? Can the most fragile survivor hold the fiercest strength? This story says yes, because some loves aren't found. They're forged in fire, in war, in the unwavering choice to protect, honor, and love, even when the world falls apart, especially then.